I found my father on the living room floor, his right arm bent in ways God never intended. For places, that's what the paramedic said later. For separate fractures. His face was gray, eyes half closed, breathing shallow. Blood pooled under his elbow where bone had nearly torn through skin. And standing in the doorway, smirking like he'd just won something, was Dominic, my girlfriend's brother. Hit like, subscribe for more betrayal stories, and comment your city or country. Let me back up. My name is Logan, and I've spent the last 8 years doing things most people only see in movies. Special Forces. The kind of training where you learn 100 ways to end a threat without breaking a sweat. But I never talked about it much. My girlfriend Clara knew I was in the military, but she didn't know the details. Didn't know what I was capable of. And I liked it that way. Keeping that part of my life separate, staying humble, being the normal guy who worked private security consulting. My father, Victor, raised me alone after Mom died when I was 12. He's a retired Marine, tough as nails, but he's 62 now, and his fighting days are long behind him. He lives quietly in a small house 20 minutes from my apartment, tends his garden, watches old westerns, and calls me every Sunday without fail. That Sunday, he didn't call. I drove over around noon, annoyed that he hadn't picked up my 3 calls. His front door was unlocked. That was the first red flag. Dad never left doors unlocked. I walked in calling his name. That's when I saw him. Dad. I dropped to my knees beside him, hands hovering over his twisted arm, afraid to touch it. What happened? Who did this? His voice came out as a rasp. Dominic. Came looking for Clara, said she owed him money. My blood went cold. Dominic. Clara's older brother. The guy I'd bailed out of debt twice in the past year because Clara begged me to. The guy who'd promised to get his life together after I paid off his gambling debts to some loan shark. That Dominic. Where is he? My voice came out flat, calm, the way it does before a mission. Left, maybe 10 minutes ago. Victor coughed, wincing. Logan, don't. Call the police first. I was already dialing 911 with one hand, texting Clara with the other. Where are you? The ambulance arrived in 6 minutes. I rode with Dad, watching the paramedics stabilize his arm, seeing him bite down on screams as they moved him onto the stretcher. For fractures, 1 in the upper arm, 3 in the forearm. Surgery would be needed. Months of recovery. Clara called while we were in the ambulance. I answered on speaker. Logan? Baby, where are you? Dominic said, your brother broke my father's arm. I cut her off, my voice ice. In 4 places. We're heading to St. Mary's Hospital. You need to tell me everything, right now. Silence. Too long. That's when I knew. Clara, did you know he was going to my father's house? Logan, it's not what you think, did you? No. Her voice cracked. He said he just wanted to talk to your dad. Ask about the money I borrowed from you last month. I didn't think he'd. I hung up. The paramedic glanced at me, then looked away. Even a stranger could hear the betrayal in her voice. At the hospital, they took Dad straight to surgery. I sat in the waiting room, hands clasped, breathing controlled. In Special Forces, they teach you to manage stress, to compartmentalize. Right now, I compartmentalized rage into a small box in my mind and locked it away. I'd deal with it later. Clara showed up 30 minutes into the surgery. She looked scared, eyes red, makeup smeared. She rushed toward me, but I held up a hand. Don't. Logan, please, let me explain. Your brother attacked my father. A 62-year-old retired Marine who can barely lift a bag of groceries anymore. He broke his arm in 4 places because you owed him money that I gave you. I stood, and she stepped back. Where's Dominic now? I don't know. He's not answering. You knew he was going there, Clara. Her face crumpled. I thought he'd just talk to him. Ask him to convince you to give me more money. Dominic's been desperate, Logan. He owes some really bad people. So he took it out on my father? My voice rose for the first time. Other people in the waiting room looked over. I lowered it again, leaning close. My father, who never did anything to him except exist. It was an accident, Logan. Dominic said they argued. And your dad pushed him first. My father can barely push a lawnmower, Clara. Don't insult me. She grabbed my arm. Please don't call the police. It'll destroy my family. Dominic will go to prison, my mom will. I pulled my arm away. Get out. Logan, get out of this hospital before I have security remove you. She stood there, tears streaming, looking at me like I was the villain in this story. Then she turned and left, heels clicking on the tile floor, echoing in the silence she left behind. The surgeon came out 3 hours later. Dad made it through, but the damage was severe. Pins, plates, months of physical therapy. Maybe he'd regain 70% function if he was lucky. I sat by his bed that night, watching him sleep under sedation, his arm wrapped in a cast from shoulder to wrist. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Your old man got what he deserved. You're next if you don't pay what Clara owes. I read it twice. Then I smiled. Not with humor, but with the cold precision of someone who's just been handed all the justification he needs. Dominic made a mistake tonight. Not just attacking my father. He threatened a man who's been trained to respond to threats in ways he couldn't imagine. I stayed at the hospital all night, sitting in that uncomfortable chair next to Dad's bed, watching monitors beep and his chest rise and fall. The text from Dominic sat on my phone like a lit fuse. I didn't respond. Guys like him. Bullies who'd never faced real consequences. They expected reactions. Fear, anger, panic. They fed on it. I gave him nothing. Around 6 in the morning, Dad stirred. His eyes opened slowly, found me, and something like relief crossed his face. Hey, old man. I said softly, leaning forward. How you feeling? Like I got hit by a truck. His voice was rough from the breathing tube they'd used during surgery. He looked at his casted arm, then back at me. How bad? 4 fractures. They put in pins and plates. Surgeon says with therapy, you might get back 70% function. Maybe more if you're stubborn enough. He tried to smile. I'm a Marine. Stubborn's all I got. We sat quiet for a moment. Then I asked the question that had been burning in my mind all night. Dad, what really happened? Start from the beginning. He sighed, shifted slightly, winced. Clara came by about 2 weeks ago. Wanted to borrow money from you, but was too proud to ask directly. Asked me to talk to you about it. I said no. Told her you'd already helped her family enough. That tracked. Clara had borrowed $3,000 from me 6 weeks ago. Said it was for her mother's medical bills. I'd found out later it went to Dominic's bookie. Then yesterday morning, Dad continued, Dominic showed up. Angry. Accused me of turning you against Clara. Said I was poisoning your mind against her family. I told him the truth, that I didn't need to poison anything, that his actions spoke for themselves. And he attacked you? He got in my face, started shoving. I pushed back, told him to get out of my house. That's when he grabbed my arm and twisted it behind my back. I heard the first crack before I even hit the ground. He kept twisting. Dad's jaw tightened. He didn't stop until I screamed. Then he just left, laughing. The rage in that small box in my mind rattled its lock. I breathed through it. Did you know, Dad asked carefully, that Clara knew he was coming? She admitted it. Said she thought he'd just talk to you. Dad shook his head. Son, I've been around long enough to know when someone's lying to themselves and when they're lying to you. Clara knew exactly what kind of man her brother is. She sent him anyway. That's what hurt most. Not the money I'd given her family over 2 years together. Not even the attack on my father. It was the fact that she'd weaponized my kindness. Used my love for her as a tool to manipulate me into supporting a man who'd just put my father in a hospital bed. I thought about our relationship. Met Clara at a coffee shop near my office 2 years ago. She was funny, beautiful, warm. We moved in together after 8 months. I thought she was the one. Thought I'd found something real after years of deployments and danger and never having time for relationships. But looking back now with clear eyes, I saw the pattern. Every few months, a crisis. Dominic owed someone money. Her mom needed help with rent. Her car broke down. Always something. And I always paid because I loved her, because that's what you do for family. Except I wasn't family to them. I was an ATM with a heartbeat. What are you going to do? Dad asked. File a police report. Press charges. Make sure Dominic pays for what he did. And Clara? I looked at my father's broken arm, at the pain lines around his eyes, at the medical equipment keeping track of his vitals. She made her choice when she stayed silent. A nurse came in to check Dad's vitals and pain levels. While she worked, I stepped into the hallway and made a call. Mason, it's Logan. Brother. Long time. What's going on? Mason and I served together in special forces for 5 years. He'd gotten out a year before me, started a private investigation firm in the city. We'd stayed close, but hadn't talked in months. I told him everything. The attack, Clara's involvement, Dominic's threatening text. Send me everything you've got, Mason said, his voice shifting from friendly to professional. Photos, medical records, that text message. I'll dig into this Dominic character, see what kind of history he's got. Guys like that don't just wake up one day and break an old man's arm. He's done something before. Appreciate it, brother. Logan, you staying cool on this? I understood what he was really asking. He knew what I was capable of, knew the training, the skills, the mindset that had been drilled into me over 8 years of operations most people would never hear about. I'm staying cool. This goes through the system. Legal. Clean. Good. Because Dominic's not worth throwing your life away over. After we hung up, I checked my messages. 7 missed calls from Clara. 3 voicemails I didn't listen to. 1 new text. Logan, please call me. We need to talk. Dominic's sorry. He wants to make this right. Don't do anything you'll regret. I almost laughed. Don't do anything I'll regret. Like she'd done? Like her brother had done? I typed a response. Tell Dominic to enjoy his freedom while it lasts. Police report gets filed today. Her reply came in seconds. You're really going to destroy my family over this? Your brother destroyed my father's arm. In 4 places. You knew he was going there. That's on you, Clara. We're done. I blocked her number after that. Blocked Dominic's too. Dad was sleeping again when I went back in. The nurse said they'd keep him another day for observation. Then he'd go home with a prescription for pain management and a referral for physical therapy. I sat back down in that uncomfortable chair, pulled out my laptop, and started documenting everything. Took photos of Dad's arm, his medical charts, the doctor's notes about the severity of the fractures. Downloaded the threatening text from Dominic before I'd blocked him. Started a timeline of every dollar I'd given Clara's family, every crisis, every manipulation. My phone buzzed one more time before Clara figured out she was blocked. It was a voicemail from her mother, Fiona, a woman I'd met maybe 5 times in 2 years. Logan, this is Fiona, Clara's mother. I don't know what happened, but please don't involve the police. Dominic has a record already. Another charge could. I deleted it without finishing. Dominic had a record. Of course he did. I called the police non-emergency line and asked about filing an assault report. They said to come down to the station, bring medical documentation, be prepared to give a full statement. One more thing, the officer said. If you feel you or your father are in danger, we can help with a restraining order. I thought about Dominic's text. You're next if you don't pay what Clara owes. Yeah, I said. I think we'll need that. When I hung up, Dad's eyes were open again, watching me. You sure about this? He asked. I looked at him. This man who'd worked 2 jobs to raise me alone, who'd driven me to boot camp when I enlisted, who'd never asked for anything except that I call on Sundays. Yeah, Dad. I'm sure. The police station was exactly what you'd expect. Fluorescent lights, tired officers, the smell of bad coffee and stress. I spent 2 hours giving my statement to Detective Harper, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She looked at the photos of Dad's arm, read through the medical reports, listened to my account without interrupting. When I showed her Dominic's threatening text, her expression hardened. This Dominic have a last name? Reeves. Dominic Reeves. She typed it into her computer, and I watched her eyebrows rise slightly. Oh, Mr. Reeves and I are already acquainted. 2 assault charges in the past 4 years, both pleaded down to disorderly conduct. Bar fights, mostly. 1 domestic disturbance call that got dropped. She looked up at me. Your father's lucky it was just his arm. Just his arm. Like that wasn't his whole independence, his ability to do the things that made him feel like himself. We'll issue a warrant, Harper continued. With the medical evidence in this text, we've got him on aggravated assault and criminal threatening. I'll also fast-track a restraining order for both you and your father. How long before he's picked up? Could be today, could be a week. Depends if he's smart enough to run. She handed me her card. If he contacts you again, call me immediately. Don't engage. I thanked her and left, feeling the first small measure of satisfaction. The system was moving. Slowly, but moving. My apartment felt emptier than usual when I got back. Clara's things were still scattered around. Her yoga mat in the corner, her favorite mug in the dish rack, a romance novel on the coffee table. We'd lived together for 6 months. I'd have to pack it all up, but not today. Today I had other priorities. Mason called around noon. Found some interesting stuff on your boy Dominic, he said. Want the highlights? Everything. 28 years old, lives with his mother and Clara in a rental house on the east side. No steady employment for the past 3 years. Works odd construction jobs when he's not gambling. Got himself into deep water with a bookie named Ryder Chun about 8 months ago. That ring any bells? That's when Clara first borrowed money from me. $3,000. Said it was for her mom's surgery. There was no surgery. Dominic owed Chun $5,000. Clara borrowed from you to pay part of it. Then Dominic ran up the debt again. Cycle repeated. You were basically funding this guy's gambling addiction through your girlfriend. I closed my eyes, processing the depth of the deception. There's more, Mason said. Dominic's been bragging about the attack. I've got a source who heard him at Murphy's bar last night, laughing about breaking some old Marine's arm. Exact quote. Thought he was tough. They all do until reality hits. Can your source testify? If it comes to that, yeah. But Logan? This guy's escalating. The threatening text, the bragging, the total lack of remorse. He thinks he got away with something. He didn't. I know. Just be careful. Guys like Dominic, when they realize they're cornered, they get dangerous. We talked logistics for a few more minutes, then hung up. I made myself lunch, but barely tasted it. My mind was running scenarios, considering approaches, calculating outcomes the way I'd been trained to do. My apartment buzzer rang around 3. I checked the camera feed on my phone. Clara. I almost didn't let her up. But I needed to hear what she'd say, needed to see if there was any genuine remorse or just more manipulation. So I buzzed her in. She looked terrible. No makeup, hair pulled back, eyes swollen from crying. She stood in my doorway wringing her hands. Can I come in? I stepped aside without saying anything. She walked past me, and I subtly pulled out my phone, opened the voice recorder app, and set it on the bookshelf behind a picture frame. Record. Clara turned to face me. Logan, I know you're angry. Angry doesn't begin to cover it. I know. But please, just listen. Dominic he's sick, Logan. He has a gambling problem, and he gets desperate, and he does stupid things. But he's my brother. He's family. My father is family too. And your brother put him in a hospital bed. She moved closer, reaching for my hands. I stepped back. Her face crumpled. If you press charges, he'll go to prison. He already has a record. This will destroy him. Destroy our whole family. My mom can't handle this stress, Logan. She has high blood pressure, and this could literally kill her. So, I'm supposed to let your brother walk away from breaking my father's arm in 4 places because your mom has high blood pressure? I'm asking you to think about the bigger picture. About what this will do to everyone. You're a good man, Logan. You've always been so kind, so understanding. Please, just let this go. Dominic will pay for the medical bills. He'll apologize. He'll get help for his gambling. Just don't involve the police. This was the Clara I knew. The one who could make unreasonable requests sound almost rational. Who could make you feel guilty for having boundaries. And what about you? I asked quietly. What about me? You knew Dominic was going to my father's house. You sent him there. I didn't send him. You told him where Dad lived. You told him Dad had been talking to me about your debts. You set it up, Clara. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I thought he'd just scare him a little. Make him back off. I didn't know he'd actually hurt him. You have to believe me. I don't have to believe anything anymore. She changed tactics then, softening her voice. Logan, we've been together for 2 years. Don't throw that away over one mistake. I love you. We can get through this together. We can get Dominic help. Make sure this never happens again, and move forward. Please. I looked at her, this woman I'd planned a future with, and felt absolutely nothing. The love had died the moment she admitted she'd known. Maybe it had been dying slowly for months, and I'd just been too loyal to notice. Here's what's going to happen, I said calmly. I'm going to meet with Dominic. Face to face. We're going to settle this like adults. Her face lit up with hope. You will? Oh, Logan, thank you. I'm not done. You're going to set up the meeting. Tomorrow. Tell him I want to work something out, that I'm willing to forget the police if he makes this right. Can you do that? Yes. Yes, of course. He'll be so relieved. We all will. You won't regret this, Logan. I promise. I walked her to the door. Before she left, she tried to hug me. I kept my arms at my sides. Tomorrow, I said. Text me when and where. After she left, I retrieved my phone from the bookshelf and stopped the recording. 42 minutes of Clara admitting she'd known, admitting she'd set up the encounter, admitting she was more concerned about protecting Dominic than about what he'd done to my father. I sent the file to Mason and Detective Harper both. Then I called Mason directly. Think you can get someone into Murphy's bar tonight? I need eyes on Dominic. Need to know his patterns, who he talks to, how drunk he gets. I can be there myself. What are you planning? Meeting him tomorrow. Clara's setting it up. Logan, I'm not going to touch him, Mason. I'm going to let him hang himself. That evening, Clara texted me. Murphy's bar, 7 p.m. tomorrow. He'll be there. Thank you so much for this, Logan. I knew you'd understand. I stared at that message for a long time. She really thought I was going to let this slide. Thought her tears and manipulation would work like they always had. At 7:15 the next evening, I walked into Murphy's bar. It was a dive, dim lighting, sticky floors, the smell of stale beer and desperation. Dominic sat at the bar, already 3 beers deep based on the empties in front of him. He saw me coming and grinned. Actually grinned. Well, military boy decided to show up. His words were slightly slurred. Come to pay what you owe. I sat down on the stool next to him, keeping my movements relaxed, unthreatening. Came to talk. Like Clara said. Talk. He laughed, loud enough that other patrons glanced over. Your old man couldn't handle a simple conversation. Guess it runs in the family. I kept my face neutral, despite every instinct screaming to respond to Dominic's mockery. He wanted a reaction, wanted me to swing first so he could play victim. But I'd been in rooms with enemy combatants who'd actually killed people, and Dominic Reeves was nothing compared to them. Your old man talked a big game for someone who went down that easy, Dominic continued, taking another swig of beer. Retired Marine, my ass. Cried like a baby when I twisted that arm. I counted to 3 in my head. Breathe. Focus. I'm here to make this right, I said evenly. Clara told me about your situation. The debts. The pressure you're under. I get it. That caught him off guard. His grin faltered. You get it. You felt disrespected. Felt like my father was interfering in your family business. Things escalated. It happens. The lies came smoothly. I don't want to destroy your life over one bad moment. So let's figure this out. What's it going to take to make this go away? Dominic studied me through bleary eyes, trying to determine if I was serious. Greed won out over suspicion. Your pops has medical bills, right? Surgery and all that. About 40,000, not counting therapy. He whistled low. That's rough. Tell you what, I'll cover half. 20 grand. But you gotta drop any police stuff, sign something saying it was an accident, and we're square. I pretended to consider it. 20's a start. But there's also lost wages, pain, and suffering. My father can't work for at least 6 months. He's retired. He does contracting work on the side. Carpentry. That's gone now. Another lie, but Dominic wouldn't know. His jaw tightened. How much total? 60,000. And a written apology. He laughed, but it was nervous. I don't have that kind of money, man. You know that. Then we work out a payment plan. I'm being reasonable here, Dominic. The alternative is prison. Aggravated assault with a prior record? You're looking at 5 years minimum. His face darkened. Clara said you were going to let this go. I am, if you meet my terms. Otherwise, I shrugged. I've got a lawyer on standby. That wasn't technically a lie. I'd called Nathaniel Grant that morning, a lawyer Mason recommended who specialized in assault cases and civil suits. Nathaniel had been blunt. You've got an airtight criminal case. Aggravated assault, terroristic threats, everything documented. Civilly, you could own this guy's future earnings for decades. But if you're looking for actual justice versus just revenge, we do this smart. Smart meant building a case so overwhelming that Dominic would have no defense, no sympathy, no way out except total accountability. Tell you what, I said to Dominic now. Let me talk to Clara, get you both together, and we'll hash out the details. Tomorrow night. My place. Bring any documentation of your finances, and we'll structure something that works. He looked suspicious but desperate. No cops. No cops. Just us, Clara, and a written agreement. We sign, shake hands, move on. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. He finished his beer. 7 o'clock? 7 o'clock. I left Murphy's bar feeling Mason's eyes on me from across the room. He'd been sitting in a corner booth the whole time, recording everything on his phone. We'd planned it that way. Visual and audio evidence of Dominic's admission, his mockery, his complete lack of remorse. The next morning, I met Nathaniel at his downtown office. He was younger than I expected, maybe 35, but sharp as a blade. So you're setting a trap, he said after I explained the plan. I'm giving him an opportunity to incriminate himself further. That's what I said. He smiled. Smart. But you need to be careful about consent laws. Pennsylvania's a two-party consent state for recordings. What if he's in my home, and there are visible cameras? Then it's legal as long as you disclose their presence. Doesn't matter if he sees them or not, as long as they're not hidden in private spaces like bathrooms. I'd already thought this through. I'll put them in plain sight. Small security cameras. He won't pay attention, but they'll be there. Nathaniel pulled out a legal pad. Walk me through what you expect to happen at this meeting. I laid it out. Dominic and Clara would arrive expecting a negotiation. I'd start reasonable, offering a payment plan. Dominic would either agree, admitting fault on camera, or he'd get aggressive and incriminate himself further. Either way, I'd have everything documented. After that, Nathaniel asked, I kicked them out and filed charges the next morning. You file the civil suit simultaneously. You're going scorched earth on this. He broke my father's arm in 4 places and threatened me, then bragged about it. Yeah, I'm going scorched earth. Nathaniel made notes. I'll draw up a civil complaint today. We'll file it the moment criminal charges are confirmed. Medical bills, pain and suffering, lost wages, emotional distress. With the evidence you've got, we're looking at a 6-figure settlement minimum. That afternoon, I stopped by an electronics store and bought 2 small security cameras. Installed them in my living room. One on the bookshelf pointing at the couch, one on the TV stand covering the entrance. Obvious if you looked, invisible if you didn't care. Then I visited Dad. He was home now, navigating his house one-handed, frustrated by every simple task he couldn't do anymore. Opening a jar, tying his shoes, buttoning a shirt. Got the meeting set for tonight, I told him. Dominic and Clara are coming here. He looked at me with those steady marine eyes. Son, I know what you're capable of. I've seen you handle situations most men couldn't survive. But this anger you're carrying, don't let it consume you. It's not anger, Dad. It's clarity. That's what worries me. He shifted in his chair, wincing. Revenge has a way of hollowing you out. Trust me, I've seen it happen to good men. This isn't revenge. It's justice. What's the difference? I thought about that. Revenge is about making them suffer. Justice is about making sure they can't hurt anyone else. He nodded slowly. Just remember, at the end of this, you still have to live with yourself. Make sure you can. I left his house with those words echoing in my head. Make sure you can live with yourself. But how could I live with myself if I let Dominic walk away? If I let Clara's manipulation go unpunished? If I taught them that kindness was weakness? Mason called at 6:30. Got the surveillance from last night. Dominic spent 2 hours at Murphy's after you left, telling everyone who'd listen about how he's got you wrapped around his finger. Said you're going to pay him off and he'll never work another day in his life. Send it to Nathaniel. Already did. Logan, you sure about this meeting? This guy's unpredictable. I'm sure. Just make sure your phone's on. I'll call if things go sideways. At 6:50, my buzzer rang. They were early. I checked the camera feed, Clara and Dominic, standing close, looking nervous. I buzzed them up. When I opened the door, Clara tried to smile. Dominic looked around my apartment like he was pricing the furniture. Come in, I said. Let's settle this. They sat on my couch. Clara perched on the edge like she might bolt any second. Dominic sprawled out like he owned the place. I took the chair across from them, keeping the coffee table between us. Want something to drink? I offered. Nah, let's just get this done, Dominic said. You got the paperwork? We'll get to that. First, I want to understand what happened. From your perspective, Dominic, walk me through it. He glanced at Clara, who nodded encouragingly. Classic mistake. They thought I actually cared about his side. Your pops confronted me about money Clara owed. Dominic started. Got all high and mighty, saying I was using her, that I needed to get my life together. I tried to leave, but he grabbed me. We struggled. His arm got twisted. Accident. An accident that broke his arm in 4 separate places? Dominic shrugged. Old bones, man. Not my fault he's fragile. Clara touched his arm. Dominic, that's not. It's the truth. He leaned forward. Look, Logan, I'll be straight with you. I don't have 60 grand, but I can do 10 right now, cash. You drop this whole thing, we all move on. 10,000 for destroying my father's independence. Your father's fine. He's got another arm, doesn't he? The casual cruelty of that statement hung in the air. Clara looked uncomfortable, but said nothing. Here's my counteroffer, I said calmly. 40,000, paid over 12 months. You get a second job, you budget, you make it work. In exchange, I don't press criminal charges. 40? Are you insane? Dominic stood up, and Clara quickly followed. I don't have that kind of money. Nobody does. Then you shouldn't have attacked a 62-year-old man. His face reddened. I told you it was an accident, except it wasn't. I pulled out my phone, opened the voice memo app. Want to hear what you really said? This is from 2 nights ago at Murphy's bar. I pressed play. Dominic's drunken voice filled my living room. Broke some old Marine's arm. Thought he was tough. They all do until reality hits. The color drained from Clara's face. Dominic's expression shifted from confusion to anger to panic in seconds. You recorded me? That's illegal. Actually, it's not. You were in a public space, speaking loudly enough for multiple witnesses to hear. My investigator was one of them. I stood now too, keeping my voice level. Want to hear what else I have? I pulled up the recording from Clara's visit. Pressed play again. Her voice, tinny but clear. I thought he'd just scare him a little. Make him back off. Turn it off, Clara whispered. Why? This is you admitting you knew Dominic was going to my father's house. That you set it up. I didn't mean, you meant exactly what you said, Clara. You weaponized your brother against my father because Dad told you no. I looked at Dominic. And you? You didn't just attack him. You tortured him. Kept twisting even after you heard bones break. Then you laughed about it. Dominic's hands clenched into fists. You smug piece of, he lunged across the coffee table, faster than Clara could react, but exactly as slow as I'd expected. I'd been watching his body language, reading the tells that preceded violence. Seen them 1,000 times in training, in combat, in situations where hesitation meant death. I sidestepped, caught his wrist mid-swing, and used his momentum against him. 3 seconds. That's all it took. His arm twisted behind his back, face pressed against my hardwood floor, my knee on his spine applying just enough pressure to control without injury. Let him go. Clara screamed. Tell him to calm down first. Dominic thrashed, trying to break free. He was strong. Construction work had built muscle. But strength without technique is just wasted energy. I applied a joint lock, nothing that would damage him permanently, just enough discomfort to make the point. You done? I asked quietly. Get off me. That's not an answer. I increased pressure slightly. Are you done? Yes. Yes, I'm done. I released him and stepped back. Dominic scrambled up, holding his shoulder, glaring at me with pure hatred. Clara helped steady him. You just assaulted me, Dominic spat. You're done. I'm pressing charges. Go ahead. You attacked me in my home. There are 2 cameras that caught everything. I pointed to the security cameras on my bookshelf and TV stand. They also caught you admitting the attack on my father wasn't an accident. Caught Clara admitting she set it up. Caught you lunging at me first. For the first time, real fear crossed Dominic's face. Those weren't there before. They were. You just didn't notice. Most people don't. I walked to my door and opened it. Get out. Both of you. Clara didn't move. Logan, please. We can still fix this. Fix what? The lies? The manipulation? The fact that you chose protecting him over basic human decency. I looked at her, really looked at her, and wondered how I'd ever love this person. You knew what he was going to do. You sent him to my father's house, like sending a weapon. And when he broke Dad's arm, you defended him. Asked me to let it go. Try to make me feel guilty for wanting justice. Tears streamed down her face. I was scared. You were selfish. There's a difference. Dominic grabbed Clara's arm. Let's go. This psycho isn't worth it. They headed for the door, but I had one more thing to say. Dominic? The police report gets filed tomorrow morning. Criminal charges for aggravated assault and terroristic threats. My lawyer's also filing a civil suit. You're going to pay for what you did, either through prison time or by spending the next decade of your life working to cover damages. Either way, you lose. He turned back, face twisted with rage. You think you're some kind of hero? You're just another entitled prick who... I'm the guy who gave your family thousands of dollars while you gambled it away. I'm the guy who tried to help when you were desperate. And I'm the guy whose father you crippled because you're too weak to handle your own failures. I stepped closer, and despite his size advantage, Dominic backed up. I could have handled you the way I was trained to. Could have put you in a hospital bed next to my father. But I didn't. Because unlike you, I have discipline, self-control, honor. Logan, don't do this. Clara tried one last time. Please. You did this. Both of you. Now deal with the consequences. They left. I closed the door behind them, locked it, and stood there for a moment, adrenaline slowly fading. Then I called Mason. Got everything on camera. He lunged at me. I defended myself, and they both incriminated themselves further. Beautiful. Sending this to Nathaniel now. Already on it. After we hung up, I downloaded the camera footage to my laptop, backed it up to 3 different cloud services, and sent copies to both Mason and Nathaniel. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Dominic must have gotten a new one after I blocked him. You're dead. You and your father both. Watch your back. Screenshot. Forward to Detective Harper with a message. More evidence of threats. Filing charges tomorrow as discussed. Her response came within minutes. Warrant for his arrest will be ready by 9 a.m. Stay safe. I sat down on my couch, in the exact spot where Dominic had sat 30 minutes earlier, and felt something I hadn't felt since finding Dad on that floor. Control. Complete, total control of the situation. Tomorrow, the real consequences would begin. Detective Harper called me at 8:30 the next morning. We picked up Dominic Reeves an hour ago. He's being processed now. Arraignments this afternoon at 2. That fast. When someone threatens violence in writing after committing aggravated assault. Yeah, we move fast. You'll need to be there to testify if the judge asks. I was at the courthouse by 1:45, suit and tie, every piece of evidence organized in a folder. Nathaniel met me outside the courtroom. How's your father holding up? He asked. Physical therapy 3 times a week. He can barely lift a coffee cup with that arm. I showed him my phone, a photo from yesterday of Dad struggling to button his shirt. Doctor says he might regain 70% function if he's lucky and works hard. Nathaniel added the photo to his file. That's going in the civil suit. Pain and suffering, loss of quality of life, ongoing medical expenses. We're building something Dominic can't fight. The courtroom was standard, wood paneling, uncomfortable benches, that particular smell of old paper and anxiety. Dominic sat at the defense table in an orange jumpsuit, wrists cuffed, looking smaller than he had in my apartment. His public defender, a tired-looking woman named Patricia Chun, shuffled through papers without much enthusiasm. The judge, an older man named Hutchinson, reviewed the charges with the mechanical efficiency of someone who'd done this 10,000 times. Mr. Reeves, you're charged with aggravated assault causing serious bodily injury, terroristic threats, and intimidation of a witness. How do you plead? Dominic glanced at his lawyer, who nodded. Not guilty, Your Honor. The prosecution has evidence to present. The assistant district attorney, a sharp woman named Jennifer Torres, stood up. Extensive evidence, Your Honor. Medical documentation showing the victim suffered 4 compound fractures requiring surgical intervention. Recorded threats made by the defendant to both the victim and his son. Video surveillance of the defendant bragging about the attack. And witness testimony placing the defendant at the scene. Judge Hutchinson's eyebrows rose. Ms. Chun, your client seems to have documented his own guilt fairly thoroughly. Patricia Chun stood, looking uncomfortable. Your Honor, my client maintains this was a case of self-defense during a confrontation that escalated. Self-defense. Hutchinson cut her off. Against a 62-year-old retired Marine? With 4 separate fractures? And then he threatened the victim's son in writing? He flipped through the file. Mr. Reeves also has 2 prior assault charges. Bail is set at $50,000. Trial date is set for 6 weeks from today. Next case. The gavel came down. Dominic twisted in his seat, searching the gallery until his eyes found mine. The hatred in that look was pure, concentrated. Clara sat 3 rows behind him, crying quietly into her hands. I felt nothing looking at either of them. Outside the courthouse, Nathaniel handed me another folder. Civil complaint. I'm filing this today. We're suing for medical expenses, lost wages, pain and suffering, emotional distress, and punitive damages. Conservative estimate? $200,000. He doesn't have that kind of money. No, but will garnish his wages for years. Every paycheck he earns, a percentage comes to your father. It's not about the money, Logan. It's about permanent consequences. My phone buzzed repeatedly as I drove to Dad's house. Voicemails from Clara. I listened to the first one on speaker. Logan, please call me back. Dominic's bail is $50,000. We can't afford that. He's going to sit in jail for 6 weeks until trial. Please, I know you're angry, but this is destroying my family. My mom had a panic attack this morning. This has to stop. I deleted it without listening to the others. She wanted me to feel guilty for Dominic's choices. Wanted me to fix the consequences of actions I didn't commit. Not happening. Dad was in his living room when I arrived, working with elastic resistance bands, trying to rebuild strength in his right arm. His face was tight with pain and frustration. How'd it go? He asked, setting down the bands. $50,000 bail. Trial in 6 weeks. He's staying in jail until then unless his family can scrape together $5,000 for a bondsman. Dad nodded slowly. And the civil suit? Filed today. Nathaniel's going after everything. Medical bills, therapy costs, lost income, pain and suffering. He says we're looking at $200,000 minimum. That's a lot of money for a man who doesn't have any. It's also a lot of broken bones for a man who didn't deserve them. I sat down across from him. You having doubts? He flexed his hand, wincing. I can't tie my own shoes anymore, son. Can't hold a hammer, can't shuffle a deck of cards, can't do half the things that made me feel like myself. So no, I don't have doubts about pressing charges. But I do wonder what happens after. When the trial's over, when Dominic's in prison, when Clara's moved on. What then? Then you heal. Then we move forward. And the anger you're carrying? I thought about that. Thought about the cold satisfaction I'd felt watching Dominic in cuffs, the clinical precision with which I'd documented every piece of evidence, the total absence of mercy in my approach. It's not anger anymore, I said finally. It's clarity. I know exactly who Clara is now, who Dominic is, what they're capable of, and I know I did the right thing by not letting it slide. Dad studied me with those marine eyes that had seen too much and understood more. Just remember, winning doesn't always feel like you think it will. Sometimes justice leaves you empty. Better empty than weak. They're not the same thing, son. We sat in comfortable silence for a while. Two men who'd served, who'd fought, who understood that some battles couldn't be won with violence but required a different kind of strength. My phone buzzed. A text from Mason. Dominic's family is scrambling to raise bail money. Word is Clara's trying to get a loan against her mother's house. Thought you should know. I showed Dad. He shook his head. She's still choosing him. She always was. 3 days passed. Dominic remained in jail. His family couldn't raise the bail money. Clara's attempts to get a loan against her mother's house fell through when the bank saw Fiona didn't have enough equity. Every day that Dominic sat in a cell, Clara's desperation grew. I found out exactly how desperate on Thursday afternoon. I work from a private security consulting firm downtown, mostly risk assessment for corporate clients. Nothing glamorous, but it pays well. I was in the middle of a meeting with a potential client when our receptionist, Brooke, knocked on the conference room door. Logan, I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's a woman in the lobby causing a scene. Says she's your girlfriend and needs to speak with you immediately. My client, a middle-aged CEO named Preston, looked uncomfortable. I apologized, excused myself, and walked out to the lobby. Clara stood near the entrance, mascara smeared, hair disheveled, and beside her was a woman I'd met exactly 3 times. Her mother, Fiona, mid-50s, tired eyes, wearing a church dress like she'd come from somewhere formal. Logan, thank God. Clara rushed toward me. We need to talk. Please. Just 5 minutes. Every eye in the lobby was on us. My coworkers, clients, the receptionist. This was calculated. Clara knew I'd be professional at work, knew I wouldn't make a scene. Not here, I said quietly. Outside. We moved to the plaza in front of the building. It was cold, overcast, threatening rain. Good. I wanted this conversation to be as uncomfortable for them as it was manipulative. You need to drop the charges, Clara started immediately. Dominic's been in jail for 3 days. He's not eating, he's having panic attacks, and the other inmates are. He should have thought about that before attacking my father. Fiona stepped forward, and her voice had steel in it. Mr. Reeves, I understand you're upset about what happened to your father, but what you're doing to my son is cruel. Dominic made a mistake, a terrible mistake, but destroying his entire life over it? That's not justice. That's revenge. Mrs. Reeves, with respect, your son broke my father's arm in 4 places, threatened me in writing, and showed 0 remorse. He bragged about it in a bar. The justice system is doing exactly what it's designed to do. He was drunk when he said those things. That doesn't make them less true. It makes them honest. Clara grabbed my arm. Logan, please. We were together for 2 years. That has to count for something. I know I made mistakes. I know I should have stopped Dominic, but I was scared of him too. He gets violent when he drinks, and I didn't know how to stop. I pulled my arm away. You told your family I was the problem, didn't you? Told them I was overreacting, that Victor started the fight, that this whole thing is blown out of proportion. Fiona's face flickered with uncertainty. That's what she told you, right? I looked at Fiona directly. That my father attacked Dominic first? That I'm being vindictive? She said there was an altercation and your father was aggressive. I pulled out my phone, opened the recordings folder. Would you like to hear the truth, Mrs. Reeves? Would you like to hear your daughter admit she knew Dominic was going to my father's house? That she thought he'd scare him a little? Or how about the recording of Dominic bragging about breaking an old man's arm? Clara's face went white. Logan, don't. Why not? You've been lying to your mother. She deserves to know what actually happened. I played the recording of Clara's confession first. Her voice, clear and damning. I thought he'd just scare him a little. Make him back off. Fiona's expression crumbled. She looked at her daughter with a mixture of shock and betrayal that was almost painful to witness. Then I played Dominic's bar conversation. His drunken laughter, the casual cruelty, broke some old Marine's arm. Thought he was tough. They all do until reality hits. When it finished, the silence was deafening. Clara, Fiona's voice was barely a whisper. You knew? Mom, I can explain. You let your brother attack an innocent man. You lied to me about it. You let me come here and defend him when he... She couldn't finish the sentence. Clara's desperation reached a new level. She turned back to me, tears streaming. Fine. Yes, I knew. Yes, I should have stopped him. But if you send Dominic to prison, it'll destroy our entire family. My mom will lose her house trying to pay lawyers. I'll lose my job because I can't focus. Everything will fall apart. Is that what you want? To punish all of us for one person's mistake? Your family's problems aren't my responsibility, Clara. You're going to regret this, she said, her voice shifting from pleading to threatening. I'll tell people what you're really like. How controlling you were. How you isolated me from my family. How you used your military background to intimidate me. I'll ruin your reputation. I took a step closer, keeping my voice calm, but letting her see the absolute conviction in my eyes. That's called defamation, Clara. And if you try it, I'll add it to the civil lawsuit. My lawyer would love another charge to pursue. You wouldn't try me. Post one lie on social media, tell one person I was abusive, spread one false rumor, and I'll bury you in legal fees right alongside your brother. Fiona put a hand on Clara's shoulder. Clara, stop. Just stop. But Clara was unraveling now, the mask of manipulation finally cracking completely. I'm terrified, okay? Dominic's going to prison, and he won't survive there. He's not tough like you or your father. He's weak and stupid and makes terrible decisions. But he's my brother. And when he gets out, if he gets out, he'll have nothing. No future, no prospects, no hope. And that'll be on me because I didn't stop this. For a moment, I felt a flicker of pity. Just a moment. Then I remembered my father's face when I found him on that floor. The way his arm bent wrong. The months of therapy ahead of him. The independence he'd lost because Clara's brother was weak and stupid and makes terrible decisions. You should have thought about Dominic's future before you sent him to my father's house, I said. And you definitely should have thought about it before you defended him afterwards. This is on you, Clara. Own it. I turned to Fiona. Mrs. Reeves, I'm sorry your family's going through this. Truly. But my father didn't deserve what happened to him, and I won't apologize for seeking justice. I understand, Fiona said quietly. She looked at Clara with profound disappointment. Come on. We're leaving. Mom, now Clara. As they walked away, Clara looked back once. The hatred in her eyes matched Dominic's perfectly. They really were family. I went back inside, apologized to Preston for the interruption, and finished the meeting. But I couldn't focus. Couldn't stop replaying Fiona's face when she realized her daughter had lied to her. That evening, I got a text from Mason. Clara's posting about you on social media. Nothing actionable yet, just vague stuff about toxic relationships and finally seeing someone's true colors. Thought you should know. I forwarded it to Nathaniel with a note. Documentation in case this escalates. His response, already screenshotting everything. If she crosses the line, we'll handle it. The trial was 4 weeks away. For weeks of Clara's desperation, Dominic's rage, and my father's painful recovery. For weeks until justice was finally served. The trial started on a Tuesday morning, 6 weeks after Dominic broke my father's arm. The courtroom was fuller than I expected. Apparently local news had picked up the story. Former Special Forces operator seeks justice for injured father, made for good headlines. Dominic sat at the defense table looking thinner, paler, with the defeated posture of someone who'd spent weeks in county jail. Patricia Chun, his public defender, had her work cut out for her. The evidence against him was overwhelming. Jennifer Torres, the prosecutor, opened strong. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this case is straightforward. The defendant, Dominic Reeves, attacked a 62-year-old retired Marine in his own home. The attack was vicious, deliberate, and left Victor Reeves with 4 compound fractures requiring extensive surgery. The defendant then threatened the victim's son, bragged about the assault to friends, and showed zero remorse. The evidence will prove beyond any doubt that Dominic Reeves is guilty of aggravated assault. Patricia Chin's opening was weaker. My client admits there was a physical altercation. But this was not a premeditated attack. It was a confrontation that escalated tragically. Victor Reeves was not an innocent victim, but an active participant in a dispute over money. My client acted in what he believed was self-defense. The prosecution's case was methodical and devastating. First came the medical evidence. Dr. Eliza Morrison, the orthopedic surgeon who'd operated on Dad, testified about the severity of the injuries. 4 separate fractures, she explained, showing X-rays to the jury. The pattern suggests sustained twisting force, not a single impact. Someone had to maintain pressure even after the first bone broke. The pain would have been excruciating immediately. Could this have been accidental? Torres asked. Not with this pattern. This required deliberate, continued force. Next came the recordings. The jury heard Dominic bragging at Murphy's bar, heard Clara admitting she'd set up the confrontation, heard Dominic's written threats to me. Several jurors looked disgusted. Then Dad took the stand. He wore his best suit, but his right arm hung stiffly at his side. He raised his left hand for the oath, and that simple gesture, showing he couldn't even raise his dominant hand, was more powerful than any words. Torres walked him through the attack gently. Dad's voice never wavered as he described opening the door to find Dominic angry and aggressive, trying to calm the situation the moment Dominic grabbed his arm. What did you feel when your arm broke? Torres asked. Like someone had set it on fire from the inside. I've been shot before, ma'am. Took shrapnel in Desert Storm. This was worse because it kept going. He didn't stop after the first crack. He kept twisting until I screamed. And even then he twisted once more before letting go. And what has life been like since? Dad's jaw tightened. I can't tie my shoes. Can't button a shirt. Can't hold my grandson, my son's future children. Can't do the woodworking I love. Can't be the man I was. Patricia Chin's cross-examination was brief and ineffective. Mr. Reeves, isn't it true you confronted my client about money? I told him his sister had borrowed money from my son and that he should leave them alone. That's not a confrontation. That's a conversation. A conversation that escalated. Because your client chose violence. Mason testified next, presenting surveillance footage of Dominic bragging, along with witness statements from others at Murphy's bar who'd heard him. Then came the video from my apartment showing Dominic lunging at me. The prosecution rested. Patricia Chin called only 2 witnesses, character references for Dominic from his mother and a former employer. Both admitted under cross-examination that Dominic had anger issues and a history of poor decisions. Then came the moment that changed everything. Defense calls Clara Reeves to the stand. I hadn't expected this. Clara walked to the witness box, avoiding my eyes completely. She looked exhausted, worn down by weeks of stress. Patricia Chin started gently. Ms. Reeves, you're the defendant's sister, correct? Yes. And you were in a relationship with Logan Reeves, the victim's son? Yes. For 2 years. Can you describe Victor Reeves's attitude toward your family? Clara hesitated. This was supposed to be where she painted Dad as the aggressor, as someone who'd interfered in family business. But something in her face shifted. He was kind, she said quietly. He was always kind to me. Patricia Chin's expression flickered with confusion. But there was tension over money, wasn't there? Yes, because my brother kept using me to get money from Logan. Victor saw that. He tried to protect his son. Torres perked up, sensing an opening. Patricia Chin tried to redirect. Ms. Reeves, on the day of the incident, Did Victor Reeves say or do anything aggressive toward your brother? Clara closed her eyes. When she opened them, tears streamed down her face. No. He asked Dominic to leave. That's all. The courtroom went still. Ms. Reeves, I'm under oath, Clara said, voice breaking. I have to tell the truth. I told Dominic where Victor lived. I told him Victor had talked to Logan about the money. I knew Dominic was angry, knew he'd been drinking, knew he was capable of violence. And I didn't stop him because I was tired of being caught between my brother and my boyfriend. Patricia Chun looked stricken. Ms. Reeves, you don't have to. Yes, I do. Clara looked at the jury now. Logan was good to me. Too good. He paid off Dominic's debts multiple times. He helped my mother with rent. He loved me, and I used that love as a weapon. When Victor tried to protect his son from being used anymore, I punished him for it. Not directly, but I knew what Dominic would do. She turned to me then, finally meeting my eyes. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for what I helped happen. But I can't keep lying. Not even to save my brother. The silence in the courtroom was absolute. Patricia Chun had no more questions. Torres's cross-examination was brief, just confirmation of what Clara had already admitted. When Clara stepped down, she walked past Dominic without looking at him. His face was a mask of betrayal and rage. Closing arguments were almost anticlimactic. Torres summarized the overwhelming evidence. Patricia Chun made a half-hearted plea for leniency, arguing Dominic had already suffered by losing his freedom. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. When they returned, the forewoman stood. We find the defendant guilty on all counts. Dominic's head dropped. Fiona sobbed quietly in the gallery. Clara sat stone-faced, staring at nothing. Judge Hutchinson set sentencing for 2 weeks out, denying bail pending sentencing. Outside, Dad and I stood on the courthouse steps. He flexed his right hand slowly, painfully. She told the truth, he said. Didn't expect that. Neither did I. Think she'll be okay? I thought about Clara's face when she testified, the weight that seemed to lift when she finally stopped lying. Eventually, maybe. Sentencing day arrived 2 weeks later. The courtroom felt different this time. Heavier, more final. This wasn't about proving guilt anymore. This was about consequences. Judge Hutchinson reviewed Dominic's file with the kind of careful attention that suggested he took this seriously. Mr. Reeves, you've been found guilty of aggravated assault causing serious bodily injury, terroristic threats, and witness intimidation. Before I pass sentence, is there anything you'd like to say? Dominic stood, and for a moment I thought he might actually show remorse. Instead, he glared at me across the courtroom. This whole thing is a setup. That family destroyed mine. Sit down, Mr. Reeves. Hutchinson's voice cut through like a blade. I've reviewed every piece of evidence in this case. The victim, a 62-year-old retired Marine, was attacked in his own home. You broke his arm in 4 places, bragged about it, threatened his son, and showed no remorse until you were caught. Your prior record shows a pattern of violence and poor decision-making. He paused, letting that sink in. The law provides a sentencing range for these crimes. Given the severity of the victim's injuries, your complete lack of remorse, and your criminal history, I'm sentencing you to 4 years in state prison. You'll also complete mandatory anger management counseling and pay full restitution to Victor Reeves for all medical expenses, therapy costs, and pain and suffering. Dominic's face went white. 4 years? That's fair. That's fair, Mr. Reeves. You're fortunate it's not longer. The gavel came down with finality. Court is adjourned. 2 bailiffs moved to escort Dominic out. He twisted back, searching for Clara in the gallery, but she wasn't there. Hadn't come to sentencing. Fiona sat alone in the back row, crying silently into a tissue. Outside, reporters swarmed. I gave a brief statement, thanked the justice system, expressed hope that my father could now focus on healing, declined to comment further. Dad stood beside me, steady and quiet, his right arm still in a supportive brace. Nathaniel caught up with us at my car. Civil suit hearing is scheduled for next month. With the criminal conviction, It's basically a formality. We'll get judgment for full damages, medical bills, ongoing therapy, pain and suffering, lost quality of life. Conservative estimate is $200,000. He doesn't have it, I said. No, but his wages will be garnished for the next 20 years. Every job he gets, every paycheck, a percentage goes to your father. It's not about collecting the full amount, Logan. It's about permanent accountability. We filed the civil suit that afternoon. The hearing 4 weeks later took less than an hour. The judge reviewed the criminal conviction, the medical evidence, and Dad's testimony about ongoing limitations. Judgment: $215,000 in damages, to be paid through wage garnishment at 25% of Dominic's income for the duration. He'll be 48 before this is paid off, Nathaniel explained afterwards. Every job application, every paycheck, every time he tries to move forward with his life, he'll remember what he did. I saw Clara one more time after that. It was outside the civil courthouse, and she looked like she'd aged 5 years and 3 months. Thinner, harder, with dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't hide. She started walking toward me, but something in my expression stopped her. I didn't say anything, didn't acknowledge her. Just walked to my car with Dad, got in, and drove away. In the rearview mirror, I watched her standing there alone and felt nothing. The months that followed were about healing, not revenge. Dad threw himself into physical therapy with the same stubborn determination he'd brought to everything in life. 3 times a week, sometimes 4, working with a therapist named Paige who specialized in trauma recovery. I started going with him to sessions, partly for support, partly because I needed something to do with the anger that still simmered beneath my control. Paige was good at her job, patient, encouraging, never letting Dad give up even when the progress felt microscopic. Squeeze, she'd instruct, placing a soft ball in his right hand. Just a little pressure. There you go. The first time Dad managed to squeeze that ball, really squeeze it, not just close his fingers around it. His eyes got wet. He looked at me, nodded once, and I understood. This was victory. Not the trial, not Dominic's sentence, but this moment right here. 6 months after the attack, Dad could lift a coffee cup with his right hand. Could button most of his shirt, though the top buttons still defeated him. Could tie his shoes if he took his time. The doctor said he'd regained about 75% function, better than expected, though still far from normal. We were leaving physical therapy one evening when Dad stopped me in the parking lot. "You did good, son." We both did. "No, I mean it. You could have handled this 100 different ways, most of them violent. You had the training, the capability, the justification. But you chose justice instead. Let the system work. That takes more strength than people realize." I thought about the moment in my apartment when Dominic had lunged at me, how easy it would have been to do real damage instead of just restraining him. How many times I'd imagined different scenarios, different outcomes, different levels of force. "You raised me to be better than my worst impulses," I said. "Did I, though?" He smiled slightly. "Or did you just figure that out on your own?" "Both, probably." We drove home in comfortable silence. Dad still lived alone, still maintained his independence as much as his injury allowed. I checked on him daily, helped with things he couldn't manage, but never made him feel helpless. That night, I got an email from the Department of Corrections. Dominic had been transferred to a medium security facility 3 hours away. Would serve at least 3 years before being eligible for parole. The wage garnishment would begin the moment he was released and employed. I forwarded it to Dad without comment. His response came 5 minutes later: "Justice served. Now we move on." And we did. Not forgetting, not pretending it hadn't happened, but refusing to let it define us. Dad's arm would never be the same, and that was a loss we both carried. But he was alive, healing, and still the man who'd raised me right. That was enough. 9 months after the attack, I found myself sitting across from Dad at our regular Sunday breakfast spot, a diner called Ruby's that we'd been going to since I was a kid. He was cutting his pancakes with his right hand, movements still slower than they used to be, but steady. Progress. "Mason called yesterday," I said, pouring syrup. Asked if I wanted to go shooting this weekend. Said it's been too long. Dad nodded. You should go. When's the last time you did something just for yourself? He had a point. The past 9 months had been consumed by trials, therapy sessions, paperwork, and making sure Dad had everything he needed. My life had become a routine of work, check on Dad, handle legal follow-ups, repeat. Maybe I will, I said. You know what I think? Dad set down his fork and looked at me with that particular intensity that meant he was about to say something important. I think you've been using my recovery as an excuse to avoid dealing with what Clara did to you. I started to protest, but he held up his right hand, which still shook slightly but worked. I'm not saying you shouldn't have helped me. You're a good son, and I'm grateful. But son, you got betrayed too. By someone you loved, someone you trusted. You've been so focused on getting justice for me that you haven't processed what happened to you. The truth of that settled heavy in my chest. He was right. I'd compartmentalized the betrayal, locked it away in that same mental box where I'd put the anger. Dealt with it later. Except later kept getting pushed back. I'm fine, I said automatically. You're disciplined. That's different than fine. He took a sip of coffee. You know who helped me the most these past months? Paige. Not just with my arm, but with accepting what happened. Processing the anger, the frustration, the loss. You should talk to someone too. I thought about Paige, Dad's physical therapist who'd become something of a friend to both of us. She was good at her job, but more than that, she understood veterans. Understood the particular brand of stubbornness that came with military service. I'll think about it, I said, which was my way of saying probably not. Dad smiled like he knew exactly what I was thinking. Your mother used to say the same thing. I'll think about it meant I've already decided no, but I'm being polite. Despite everything, I laughed. She knew you well. 20 years of marriage will do that. His expression softened, the way it always did when he talked about Mom. She'd be proud of how you handled this. The restraint, the discipline. But she'd also tell you the same thing I am. Don't let what Clara did turn you cold. That hit harder than I expected. Cold. Was that what I'd become? I thought about the past 9 months. How I'd thrown myself into work, into helping Dad, into anything that kept me from thinking about 2 years of my life that had been built on manipulation. How I hadn't dated, hadn't even considered it. How I'd kept everyone at arm's length except Dad and Mason. I met someone, Dad said casually, like he was commenting on the weather. What? Paige. We've been getting coffee after therapy sessions. She's smart, funny, understands what I've been through. Asked me to dinner next weekend. He looked almost shy, which was strange on a man who'd served in Desert Storm. Thought I should tell you before you found out some other way. I processed that. My father was dating his physical therapist. And instead of feeling weird about it, I felt happy for him. That's great, Dad. Really. She has a colleague, he said, too innocently. Also works with veterans. No. You didn't let me finish. I don't need you setting me up with your girlfriend's coworker. So you admit I need a girlfriend, but you don't? He raised an eyebrow, and I remembered where I'd learned that particular expression. We finished breakfast arguing good-naturedly about my dating life, or lack thereof. It felt normal. The most normal thing had felt in months. That afternoon, I did something I hadn't done since before the attack. I went to the Veterans Support Center where I'd volunteered occasionally before meeting Clara. The place was run by a former Army Ranger named Grant, who'd made it his mission to help vets navigate civilian life. Logan, where have you been? Grant grabbed my hand in a firm shake. Heard through the grapevine, you had some family trouble. I gave him the abbreviated version. He listened without interrupting, nodding in places that suggested he understood more than I was saying. You interested in helping with our legal assistance program? We've got vets dealing with landlord disputes, employment discrimination, family court issues. Could use someone who knows how to navigate the system. I thought about what Nathaniel had taught me during the case, how the legal system worked when you understood the rules and had good documentation. Yeah, I could do that. Good. Orientation's Wednesday night. Bring patience and a thick skin. Some of these cases are frustrating as hell. Over the next few months, I threw myself into volunteer work, helped a former Marine fight a wrongful termination case, assisted a Navy vet with a custody dispute, connected an Air Force veteran with resources for PTSD treatment. Each case reminded me that my situation, as painful as it had been, wasn't unique. Betrayal, loss, injustice, these were universal experiences. What mattered was how you responded. It was at the Veterans Center that I ran into Paige officially, outside of Dad's therapy sessions. She was giving a talk on physical rehabilitation for combat injuries. Afterwards, we grabbed coffee. "Your father's doing remarkably well," she said. "He's regained more function than I initially predicted. That's 90% attitude, by the way. He refuses to accept limitations. He's always been stubborn. Runs in the family, I've noticed." She smiled. "He talks about you constantly. Says you saved his life. I just made sure the person who hurt him faced consequences." That's not nothing, Logan. A lot of people wouldn't have had the strength to let the system work. Would have taken matters into their own hands. She paused. "Your father also says you haven't dealt with your own part in this. The betrayal from Clara." I deflected with humor. "He's been talking to you about my feelings? That's embarrassing. He's worried about you." She wasn't letting me off easy. "And from what I can see, he's not wrong. You're functioning fine, working hard, helping others. But you're going through the motions. When's the last time you actually felt something instead of just managing it?" The question hit too close to home. I stood to leave, but she touched my arm gently. "There's a support group here. Thursday nights. Veterans dealing with PTSD, trauma, relationship issues. You don't have to talk if you don't want to. Just listen. Sometimes that's enough." I didn't go that Thursday, or the next one. But on the third Thursday, I found myself sitting in a circle of folding chairs, listening to a former Marine talk about being betrayed by his business partner. Another vet discussed divorce. A woman described losing her military career to false accusations. I didn't share my story, just listened. But something in me started to thaw. 1 year after the attack, I stood in Dad's backyard watching him work a power drill with his right hand. Slowly, carefully, but confidently. He was building a bookshelf, his first woodworking project since the injury. "Hand me that clamp," he said, and I passed it over. The drill slipped slightly, but he adjusted his grip and kept going. His arm had regained about 85% function according to his last medical evaluation. Not perfect, but close enough that he'd reclaimed most of his independence. The doctors called it remarkable. Dad called it stubbornness. "You hear from Nathaniel?" he asked, not looking up from his work. "Yeah." Civil suit settlement came through. $215,000. Plus Dominic's wages are being garnished at 25%. First payment hit last week. He got a job at a warehouse. $147. Dad nodded. "That's a start. He'll be paying for 20 years. We donated a significant portion of the settlement to the Veterans Support Center, enough to fund their legal assistance program for 5 years. The rest covered Dad's medical bills, therapy costs, and set up a fund for his ongoing care. It wasn't about the money. It never had been. Clara, Dad asked, moved to Arizona. Her mom sold the house here, went with her. Fresh start, I guess. I'd heard through Mason that Clara was working as a receptionist somewhere, trying to rebuild her life. I felt nothing about it. No satisfaction, no bitterness, just the mild curiosity you'd feel reading about a stranger's life. Dominic had 2 more years left on his sentence. He'd been denied parole after getting into a fight his first year inside. Some lessons took longer to learn than others. "You seeing Paige tonight?" Dad asked, and there was that smile in his voice. "Movies." She picked something about art thieves. I'd started dating Paige 3 months ago, after months of her patient friendship and Dad's less than subtle encouragement. She understood my past, didn't push for more than I could give, and made me laugh in ways I'd forgotten were possible. "Good woman," Dad said. "Knows when to push and when to let you come around on your own." He finished drilling the last bracket and stepped back to assess his work. The bookshelf was solid, level, well-crafted. You'd never know the man who built it had once been told he'd never regain full use of his arm. I'm proud of you, son, he said quietly. Not for the trial, not for the settlement. For not letting anger turn you into someone you're not. I helped him lift the bookshelf into place. Together we carried it inside to his living room, where it fit perfectly against the wall. That evening, Paige and I grabbed dinner before the movie. She told me about her day, a new patient struggling with recovery from a motorcycle accident, another who'd finally regained enough mobility to return to work. You make a difference, I said. The work you do, it matters. So does yours. She squeezed my hand across the table. Grant told me you helped 3 veterans this week alone. Legal issues that could have destroyed their lives, and you navigated them through it. The volunteer work had become more than just something to fill time. It had given me purpose beyond my own situation. Every case I helped with reminded me that justice was possible, that the system could work if you understood it and fought within its rules. Your father asked me something yesterday, Paige said carefully. Oh no. What did he ask? If I'd be interested in meeting his grandson someday. She watched my reaction. I told him that was a conversation you and I should have first. The future. I'd been so focused on healing from the past that I hadn't thought much about what came next. But sitting there with Paige, imagining Dad as a grandfather, imagining a life built on truth instead of manipulation, it felt possible. Let's get through the movie first, I said, smiling. Then we'll talk about the rest of our lives. She laughed, and it was the most beautiful sound I'd heard in a long time. A week later, an envelope arrived at my apartment. Prison postmark. I almost threw it away without opening it, but something made me hesitate. Inside was a single handwritten page from Dominic. Logan, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't deserve it. But I need you to know I'm sorry. Truly sorry. Not because I got caught, but because I finally understand what I did. Your father didn't deserve that. You didn't deserve the threats. I was angry at my own failures and took it out on good people. I'm using my time here to change. Taking anger management, getting my GED, learning a trade. When I get out, I'll spend the rest of my life making this right. Not just the payments, but being better. I hope someday you can believe that. Dominic, I read it twice. Looked at Dad's bookshelf across the room, at the life we'd rebuilt from broken pieces. Then I folded the letter and put it in a drawer without responding. Maybe someday I'd believe Dominic had changed. Maybe not. But either way, that was his journey, not mine. Mine was here, in Sunday breakfasts with Dad, in helping veterans navigate impossible situations, in building something real with Paige, in choosing every day to be better than my worst impulses. That was justice. Not Dominic's sentence, not the settlement money, but this, reclaiming what had been broken and making it stronger. Dad called that Sunday. Shooting range this afternoon? Yeah. Pick you up at 2. We spent 3 hours at the range. Dad's right hand still not as steady as it used to be, but good enough. His groupings were tight, professional, the muscle memory of decades returning shot by shot. On the drive home, he looked at me and said, "We made it through, son." Yeah, Dad, we did. And we had. Not unchanged, not unmarked, but unbroken. That was enough. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments. I'd love to know. If this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe for more betrayal and revenge stories that'll keep you hooked from start to finish. What kind of stories do you want to hear next? Military revenge? Family betrayal? Cheating spouse justice? Let me know in the comments what type of stories you enjoy most, and I'll bring you exactly what you're looking for. See you in the next epic thriller. Until then, take care of yourself and remember, justice isn't about revenge. It's about making sure the people who hurt you never forget.